It's Tuesday. That means it's time for another top 10 video. Once again, steering away from magic items, at least for the time being. I'm going to give you my top 10 subclasses for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. What I mean by that is the top 10 archetype or subclasses of a given class that are on my top 10 list. That's it. They just got to be official, so there's no rules. Let's just dive into the video. Number 10. Number 10 is the Circle of the Moon Druid. The reason this is number 10 on my list is I'm actually not a huge fan of Druids in general. It is just a class that I recognize that I do like and I potentially would play, except when I started playing 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, everyone was playing Moon Druids, so it kind of turned me off to it. But the main reason why this is on the list is, as you all know, they have the Combat Wild Shape ability that they get at 2nd level, which lets them transform into a Druid, or into their animal form, Wild Shape rather, as a bonus action. And they can also spend spell slots to heal, and the big thing is that they get the circle forms where they can transform into greater creatures of higher CR than other druids can, allowing them to potentially have a significantly larger health pool and allow them to tank more damage. The only downside is you can't cast in animal form until much later on. You also do get things like your weapon attacks, your natural attacks becoming magical for the purposes of overcoming damage resistance, and you eventually get the ability to turn into elementals. And then lastly, at 14, you can cast Alter Shape at will. Again, it's on my list because it's the one druid that I have tried to play other druids, and as part of this list, I only wanted to do officially published things, not Unearthed Arcana, so the druid made the list. I have a big history with druids. It was my original character I first ever played ever in D&D, and unfortunately, I just haven't been able to reclaim that class and play the way I was used to playing it to make it interesting enough for me. So hence, number 10. Number 9. Number 9 is the Way of Long Death Monk. I really like monks. I'm a big fan of kung fu movies, martial arts, and that kind of thing, so the ability to play a character who can duplicate some of those things is a big benefit for me. There are a lot of really good classes. If the Way of Mercy Monk was officially published at this point, that would probably be my choice, but it's not. I also really like the Sun Soul, but some of the abilities I think could be a little bit stronger. But the Way of Long Death is one that resonated with me that, again, I think is one that's often forgotten because it was in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, and that book is often forgotten by most people. So what do you get as a Way of Long Death Monk? Well, first of all, you get something very similar to what the Fiend Pack Warlock gets, in that when you reduce a creature, you have to reduce it yourself. Within 5 feet of you to 0 hit points, you gain temporary hit points equal to your wisdom modifier plus your monk level. So you have a way to be a more tanky monk. It also says when you reduce a creature, so there's a lot of ways you could potentially exploit this by punching a rat and killing a rat within 5 feet of you. You bring it to 0 hit points, and then you get the temporary hit points. It doesn't say what CR the creature has to be, or even that it's hostile. You just need to drop one down to 0 hit points. At 6th level, you get Hour of Reaping. This ability I'm not too keen on. When you take this as an action, each creature within 30 feet of you must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be frightened of you until the end of your next turn. I'm a little disappointed with it as it is an action to do so. And as a monk, you can usually make significantly more moves with an action in your bonus action. But again, it fits the kind of theme here. 11, you get Mastery of Death, which is when you're reduced to 0 hit points, you can spend 1 key point to have 1 hit point instead. It's at 11, therefore you have 11 key points. There's no limit to the number of times you can do this, so you can basically constantly keep coming back from the dead when you would almost be knocked out or killed, which I do enjoy that. And lastly, the ability that I think I like the most is Touch of Long Death. As an action, you touch one creature within 5 feet of you and expend 1 to 10 key points. Target must make a Constitution saving throw or take 2d10 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much on a success. So again, we're at a minimum of 2d10 necrotic damage to a maximum of 20d10 necrotic damage. Yes, I understand that Way of Open Hand technically is probably better in the long run, as Quivering Palm is basically insta-death. I don't know, I just really like this class better, and that's why, again, it's my list, so my rules. Number 8. Number 8 is the Evocation Wizard. I like wizards a lot, and I think a lot of the subclasses are really cool. I think some of them with a little tweaking could be even better, but the one I do think stands out above the rest, in my personal opinion, is the Evocation Wizard. All of those specific school-based classes get that ability to add stuff into your spell book at a half cost and half time, so I'm not really worried about that. One of the main features that you will find useful from the get-go and forever onward is the Sculpt Spells ability. When you cast an evocation spell that affects other creatures that you can see, you can choose a number of them equal to 1 plus the spell's level. The chosen creatures automatically succeed on their saving throw against the spell and take no damage if they would normally take half on a successful one. So again, think about how that synergizes in and of with itself. They automatically succeed on the saving throw if they would take no damage, and they take no damage if they would normally take half. Almost all spells are, if you succeed, you take no damage, or if you succeed, you take half. This meaning people you pick from this will basically take no damage whatsoever from any of your spells. It's an evocation spell specifically, so keep that in mind. But this is great because if you look at things like a careful spell meta magic for a sorcerer, they just succeed on the saving throw. They still take the half damage, whereas the Evocation Wizard gets it that much better. At 6th, you get potent cantrips. While when a creature succeeds on a saving throw against one of your cantrips, they take half damage, which, again, is great because if you happen to take a cantrip that is something based on a saving throw, and you waste your action potentially casting that cantrip, it's nice to know that the damage will go through and deal at least half the damage. 10 is a very powerful ability. You add your intelligence modifier to 1 damage roll of any wizard evocation spell you can cast. This can obviously be very useful for simple things like, say, a fireball, but we all know that things like magic missile can be abused with that. And lastly, one of the coolest abilities is the Overchannel. When you cast a 1st through 5th level spell that deals damage, you can choose to just deal the maximum damage from that spell. The first time you do so, you suffer no adverse effects. If you use this feature again before you finish a long rest, you take 2d12 necrotic damage for each level of the spell immediately after you cast it. Each time you use this feature before finishing a long rest, the necrotic damage per spell level increases by 1d12. So 2d12 per spell level after the first time, then it will be 3d12, and so on. It ignores resistance and immunity. I just think it's a great blasty wizard, and I've enjoyed playing one quite a bit. Number 7. Number 7 is Oath of Redemption Paladin. If you know anything about me, I love Paladins. It's my favorite class in 5th edition. I've probably played at least 7 to 8 different Paladins in my time in 5th edition in the past 5 years, and that may be understating the overall amount. This is one of the newest ones that I've gotten a chance to play, and some of the abilities make me really like it. It was originally an Unearthed Arcana class, and the changes were significant, but I like one of them specifically, and let's talk about it. So, as a Paladin, you're going to get Oath spells automatically added to your spell list that you do not need to prepare. Sanctuary and Sleep, nothing too crazy. Sleep is something you won't have access to. Calm Emotions, Hold Person, very useful. Counterspell is a big one you won't typically have as a Paladin, but Counterspell is just great to have regardless. Hypnotic Pattern, Odaluk's Resilient Sphere, again, has potential for a bunch of different combat or out-of-combat applications. Stone Skin, useful. Hold Monster, always great. And Wall of Force, another phenomenal spell. Again, these are 17th level. You probably won't have access to these most of the time, but they're nice to have. Your Channel Divinity, which is usually my biggest pet peeve with most Paladins, is they'll get really good other abilities, but their Channel Divinity usually suffers. Redemption Paladin has 2 really good Channel Divinities. One is as a bonus action, you can just give yourself a +5 to persuasion checks for 10 minutes. I enjoy this because it is a flat +5. It's not tied to anything. It's just a +5. So it behooves you to put some points into, or proficiency in persuasion, so that way you can choose to use this if you want. And remember, you get Channel Divinity back on a short rest, so it's useful there. But the ability that I like the most about this is Rebuke the Violent. Immediately and after an attacker within 30 feet of you deals damage with an attack to a creature other than you, you can use your reaction to force the attacker to make a Wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the attacker takes radiant damage equal to the damage it just dealt, half on a success. So it's a retributive thing. You don't get a lot of reaction utility as a Paladin, although this one has counterspell, so that may be slightly different. But someone attacks one of your friends, you force the attacker to make a saving throw, and they take the same amount of damage, but the damage they take is radiant, which is almost never resisted. And they still take half even if they succeed on that wisdom saving throw. I actually, out at D&D Live, playing in the D&D Epic, I was playing a Redemption Paladin, and some fiends from the lower planes attacked one of my party member, and I ended up killing it with this Rebuke the Violent ability. At level 7, you get Aura of the Guardian, which is again a very Paladin-style ability. When a creature within 10 feet of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to magically take that damage instead of the creature, which is nice. It doesn't transfer any other effects, and the damage can't be reduced in any way. And again, as typical Aura at 18, it extends out to 30 feet. I like this ability. I do wish the damage could be reduced, because that would be something cool, although again, I understand that there's reasons why to kind of offset some of the ability here, but some of the newer Unearthed Arcana abilities don't have that, so we'll see. At 15, you get Protective Spirit. You regain hit points equal to 1d6 plus half your Paladin level if you end your turn in combat with fewer than half your hit points remaining and aren't incapacitated. What's nice is it's when you end your turn in combat, so you get to go do whatever you want to do, and then you get to heal 1d6 plus half your Paladin level in hit points at the end of every turn, potentially keeping you in the fight longer, being able to use your Aura of the Guardian ability as well. And lastly, one of the few times a Paladin gets an ability at level 20 that is always on is Emissary of Redemption. You just have these all the time. You have resistance to all damage dealt by other creatures, and whenever a creature hits you with an attack, it takes damage equal to half the damage you take from the attack. Radiant damage, rather. If you attack a creature, cast a spell at it, or deal damage to it by any means but this feature, neither benefit works against the creature until you finish a long rest. So basically, you're just out there being so badass and peaceful and helping people that people deal half damage to you no matter what they do. And even if they do manage to hit you with an attack, they're still going to take retributive damage regardless. You could still use, Aura of the Guardian and other things as well. Again, I just really like it. It's a new Paladin. I haven't had a chance to play it too much, but I have enjoyed it. Number 6. Number 6 is Light Domain Cleric. Again, if you know anything about me in 5th edition, my two favorite classes are Cleric and Paladin. I apparently really like Divine Casters and also Healers, but one of my favorite domains for a Cleric is the Light Domain, because not only, obviously Clerics can get, and Paladins too, can get pigeonholed into the role of healing, but Light Domain Cleric is probably one of the blastiest clerics you will see, and I've had a great time playing one. So let's take a look at why. Well, first of all, your domain spells you get are spells that clerics pretty much will never have access to. Burning Hands and Fairy Fire. Fairy Fire is a great utility spell. Burning Hands is a great low-level damaging spell. Then Flaming Sphere and Scorching Ray. Good all around. Again, if you deal with, you're probably going to want to take Elemental Adept Fire because you're going to be dealing a lot of it. Daylight, a very useful spell to have, and then Fireball, which is an amazing thing. I just love the idea of a cleric in full vestments just slinging fireballs. I thought is great. Guardian of Faith, again a cleric spell, but on your list. Wall of Fire, and then Flame Strike, a 9th level spell, again a spell you get as a cleric, and then Scrying, a super useful spell to have, just always prepare. You get Light as a cantrip if you didn't already know it. I do think that that's kind of meh, but it is what it is. I think it would be better if it was Firebolt, but we'll take Light for free. You get the Warding Flare ability. When you are attacked by a creature within 30 feet of you that you can see, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on the attack roll, causing Light to flare before the attacker before it hits or misses. So you have to choose if you want to use this before the DM tells you if they hit. So you say, I'm going to Warding Flare it. And you can use this feature a number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier. So that's nice. It's its own kind of cooldown. Regain all uses when you finish a long rest. I like it because it reminds me of the Solar Flare ability from Dragon Ball Z, which is how I've always played it when I, play one of these characters. At level 2, you get Radiance of Dawn. As an action, you present your holy symbol and any magical darkness within 30 feet of you is dispelled. Additionally, each hostile creature within 30 feet of you must make a Constitution saving throw. A creature takes radiant damage equal to 2d10 plus your cleric level on a failed save or half on a success. A creature that has total cover is not affected. Again, you're going to get up to potentially 3 channel divinities that you get back on a short rest. This is a great way to dispel magical darkness, also deal damage. It's your action, but that still frees you up to use your bonus action for things like spiritual weapon or other things like that. At 6th level, you get to use your warding flare that you had at level 1, but now it synergizes that you can use it on other creatures within 30 feet. So you can solar flare and protect some of your allies as well. At 8th level, you get potent spellcasting, which is you add your wisdom modifier to any damage you deal with a cleric cantrip, which is great. I think it would have been even better if you had access to something like Firebolt, because again, as a cleric, all of your cantrips that you get as a cleric are all saving throw based. You have no attack based clerical cantrips where you make spell attacks, which I do think is kind of a bummer. So I think maybe we can hopefully fix that in a future supplemental book. And then lastly, at 17, you get Corona of Light. As an action, you activate an aura of sunlight that lasts for 1 minute or until you dismiss it. You emit bright light in a 60-foot radius and dim light in a 30 feet beyond that. Your enemies in the bright light have disadvantage on saving throws against any spell that deals fire or radiant damage, which is great because it synergizes with all of these, but that could also be things like your Spirit Guardian spell or Guiding Bolt or things like that. Again, it's just a really great option for a cleric who doesn't want to necessarily heal or can heal but also sling fireballs at the same time. Number 5. Number 5 is a Scout Rogue. I'll be honest with you, I've always wanted to play a rogue in Dungeons & Dragons. I've tried I don't know how many times to play a rogue, and part of it is my own fault because every time I get into a campaign with somebody, I always like to be the nice guy and let everybody else pick their classes first, and I'll pick my class last to kind of fill the gap that anybody wants, and I always just kind of hope that somebody won't pick a rogue. And every time, without fail, somebody picks a rogue. So I never get a chance to play a rogue. And once I even did, and the DM pulled a switcheroo on me, and I ended up playing my character that I thought was dead instead of the rogue that I wanted to play. If I ever do get a chance to play a rogue, it's going to be a Scout Rogue. Why? Because I really like Scout Rogue. It reminds me a lot of 3rd edition Ranger. It kind of makes me, this is the Ranger that I'd want to be playing, well, not actually playing a 5th edition Ranger, because you get all the benefits of a rogue, plus you're kind of naturey, and I've always liked the idea of the archer scout type character. So at 3rd level, you can move up to half your speed as a reaction when an enemy ends its turn within 5 feet of you. This movement does not provoke attacks of opportunity. You're a rogue, you're sneaky, you want to dodge combat. You could potentially be using your reaction for uncanny dodge, but maybe depending on where you fall in the initiative order, maybe you can use this to move away and then hide or something like that. Also, at 3rd level, you get proficiency in nature and survival, and you get essentially expertise in both of those skills, giving you a double proficiency bonus in both. So at level 1, you're going to get expertise in 2 rogue skills. At level 3, you're now going to get expertise in nature and survival, and it's not like you have to have the proficiency in them ahead of time. So you're going to get 4 rogue skills at level 1. You're going to get 2 from your background, potentially some from your race, 2 more skills at level 3 that you're going to have expertise in. So by level 6, you will have expertise in 6 skills or 5 skills and Thieves' Tools. And I think that that's pretty sweet, especially with Peerless Talent later on at level 11. At level 9, your walking speed increases by 10 feet. So chances are you're going to be at least at 40 feet, maybe 35 feet by now, which is great. If you happen to have a climbing or swimming speed at this point, it also increases by 10 feet, which is nice. At 13th level, you get Ambush Master, which is a great team ability. You have advantage on all initiative rolls, which is a great thing to have as a rogue. And in addition, the first creature you hit during the first round of combat becomes easier for you and others to strike. Attack rolls against that target have advantage until the start of your next turn. So potentially, with a high initiative score and advantage on initiatives, you will more than likely get a chance to go early in the combat round. The first creature you hit during the first round of combat becomes easier for you and others to strike. Ideally, you get to go first, so you do this, and then every attack roll against that target has advantage until the start of your next turn. Unfortunately, it would be advantage for you, but you already hit them, so chances are you used your attack. Unless, you're using dual 2-weapon fighting, which would be useful for you. I always picture my Scout Rogue as an archer, but either way. And lastly, Sudden Strike, a really cool ability. If you take the attack action on your turn, you can make an additional attack as a bonus action, and this one is one of the only times you can get to use Sneak Attack twice on the same turn, but you just can't use it on the same target. So this attack can benefit from your sneak attack even if you've already used it this turn, but you can't use your sneak attack against the same target more than once in a turn. So still, double sneak attack on your turn and potentially allowing for, opportunity attack shenanigans for more sneak attacks. I like the idea of my 17th level rogue with 3 levels of fighter, and that fighter subclass being samurai, so that I can use my samurai ability to get advantage on attack rolls and just live in sneak attack all the time. Number 4. Number 4 is Hexblade, one of my favorite characters from my short-lived time as a player in 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons was a Hexblade. Hexblades were severely underpowered in 3rd edition, at least on the base, because significant things were released after the fact that were much stronger. There were fixes that people pretty much employed. They made the Hexblade more on the level. But when I saw the idea, I wanted to make a class, my own homebrew class for Hexblade. I thought about it possibly being a Paladin subclass, but the way they handled it as the Warlock, I think, makes it one of the strongest Warlocks out there. And it makes a wonderful 1-level dip for a lot of classes as well. So you get your expanded spell list as Warlocks do. Shield and Wrathful Smite. Wrathful Smite, a pretty good smiting spell, one of the best, but more importantly, Shield is super useful. Kind of sucks to use a Warlock spell slot for it, though, because it's going to be upcast and not get any benefit from it. Blur and Branding Smite, kind of useful. Blink can be potentially good. Elemental Weapon can be good to get a magic weapon, but chances are, as a Warlock, you're going to have that. Phantasmal Killer and Staggering Smite, again, kind of useful, have their uses. Banishing Smite, pretty useful, and I'd say probably Cone of Cold is the other one that's pretty useful as a nice AoE for you as a Warlock. You're going to get Hexblade's Curse at level 1, which is a very powerful ability. As a bonus action, choose one creature within 30 feet of you. That target is cursed for 1 minute. Until the curse ends early. If it dies, you die or incapacitated. You get the following benefits on your cursed target. You deal extra damage to your cursed target equal to your proficiency bonus whenever you do damage to them. So it doesn't have to just be with a weapon. It could be with a spell. Anything, you add your proficiency bonus in damage, which is, again, a minimum of 2, maximum of 6. Any attack roll you make against a cursed target crits on a 19 or 20 as opposed to just a 20. And if the cursed target dies, you regain hit points equal to your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier. What's nice is the cursed target just has to die. You don't actually have to be the one to kill them. And you get this back on a short or long rest, just like most of your other Warlock abilities. You also get Hex Warrior. This is why it's one of the best 1-level dips for a lot of classes. Proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. And when you attack, whenever you finish a long rest, you touch one weapon that you're proficient with that lacks the 2-handed property. When you attack with that weapon, you can use your Charisma modifier instead of Strength or Dex for the attack and damage rolls. This benefit lasts until you finish a long rest. If you later gain the Pact of the Blade feature, this weapon extends to every pack weapon you conjure with this feature, no matter the weapon's type. So this lets you use Charisma as your attacking stat and your casting stat, which means you can choose to focus on other things, which was really one of the best things for a Pact of the Blade character out there, because now you can do all sorts of synergies with the new invocations. At 6th level, you get the Accursed Spectre. When you slay a humanoid, you can cause its spirit to rise up in the form of a specter, which is, the specter monster in the monster manual. When it appears, it gains temporary hit points equal to half your Warlock level. You roll initiative for it. It acts, has its own turn. It obeys your verbal commands and has a special bonus to its attack rolls equal to your Charisma modifier, which is nice because their attacks aren't that great, so it can potentially get up to a +5 on its attack rolls. It remains in your service until the end of your next long rest, at which point it vanishes to the afterlife. Once you bind a Spectre, you can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. The only downside to it is it only works on humanoids, so you gotta find yourself killing humanoids to make it work. Armor of Hexes is one of the best defensive abilities out there. If the target cursed by your Hexblade curse hits you with an attack roll, so a confirmed hit, you can use your reaction to roll a d6. On a 4 or higher, the attack instead misses you, regardless of the roll. So a natural 20 can just turn into a miss. On the Master of Hexes at level 14, when the creature cursed by your Hexblade curse dies, you can apply the curse to a different creature within 30 feet of you, provided you are incapacitated. When you apply the curse in this way, you don't regain hit points from the death of the previously cursed creature. So a little bit of balance with the 1st level ability. Hexblade is a really solid class, and with the new invocations that were added in Xanathars, it just gets even further. And it can be one of the highest damage dealing classes with Eldritch Smite, and then as well as some of the invocations that just add extra damage. Again, if you have the opportunity to play one and you're okay dealing with Warlock spellcasting, I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Number 3. Number 3 is the College of Lore Bard, what I would consider one of the strongest classes in all subclasses in all of 5th edition. So you're going to get all the benefits that a bard typically gets, but for the subclass specifically, you're going to get at level 3 just flat out proficiency in 3 skills of your choice. Again, as a reminder, as a bard, you're going to start with 3 skills of your choice, plus 2 from your background, plus another 3 from this, and potentially more from your race. If you're a half-elf bard, you're going to be rolling in skills. You're also going to get what makes it one of the strongest abilities here is Cutting Words, which everybody I'm sure is aware of or heard of. When a creature within 60 feet of you makes an attack roll, ability check, or damage roll, you can use your reaction to spend one of your bardic inspirations, rolling that die, and subtracting the number from the creature's roll. You can choose to use this feature after the creature makes its roll, but before the DM determines whether the attack roll or ability check succeeds or fails, or before the creature deals its damage. Creature that is immune if it can't hear you, or is immune to being charmed. Again, this is one of the abilities that can take an opponent's actual die roll and change it to something else, making a natural 20 into something less than that. And again, it's something that you'll have at level 3 that you will find useful all the way to level 20. Because your bardic inspiration is only going to go up, and you can only end up helping out your party in the long run. Another very powerful ability is access to magical secrets earlier than you normally would. So at level 6, you learn 2 new spells from any class rather than waiting till level 10 like other bards. You get 2 at level 6. This is potentially giving you access to a lot of spells that other classes, so this is going to be 3rd level spells, you'll have access to any 3rd or lower level spell from any spell list. So this would potentially get you spells that like a Paladin or a Ranger, things would not get until significantly later. You could have them at level 6. And lastly is Peerless Skill. When you make an ability check, you can expend one Bardic Inspiration, one use of your Bardic Inspiration. You roll that die and add it to your ability check. You can choose to do so after the roll of the die, but before the DM tells you whether you succeed or fail. It says an ability check. Initiative is an ability check. You could choose to roll your Bardic Inspiration and add it to your initiative, or probably one of the more common uses is for things like Dispel Magic or Counterspell, potentially one of the ways to add a significant turn in the other direction by rolling, I think at this point, a d12 to add to your Counterspell. Chances are you're going to make it. Number 2. Number 2 is Tempest Cleric, my absolute favorite cleric in all of 5th edition. I think it's one of the best classes. I think it synergizes amazingly well with itself. The only downside with it is, unfortunately, it was published in the Player's Handbook before a lot of the extra spells were added from Elemental Evil Player's Guide or later in Xanathars. So I do think the domain spells should have possibly been different from what we have here to match more of the idea of the Tempest. There were spells like Maelstrom and other things added later on that I think fit more than, say, like Sleet Storm or Insect Plague, for example. I think there are better options, but unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to get to see a book where they go in and update the classes from the Player's Handbook. But, maybe I'm wrong. So let's look at your domain spells. Fog Cloud and Thunderwave. Good. Thunderwave's a nice, good damaging spell for first levels. Gust of Wind and Shatter. Shatter is one of my favorite spells. It goes a very long way. Call Lightning. I would have rather have this been Lightning Bolt rather than Call Lightning, but, beggars can't be choosers. Sleet Storm. Control Water, a very useful spell. Ice Storm, also useful. Destructive Wave, again, a Paladin spell that they typically won't have access to till level 17. You have it at 9th. And Insect Plague, the one I feel like that fits the least in the grand scheme. At level 1, you get proficiency with all martial weapons and heavy armor. That's great. And you also get Wrath of the Storm. Again, an ability you get at level 1 that you will find use for throughout the entirety of the game. Whenever a creature within 5 feet of you that you can see hits you with an attack, you can use your reaction to force them to make a dexterity saving throw. The creature takes 2d8 lightning or thunder damage, your choice, on a failed save and half as much on a success. You can use this wisdom modifier times per long rest. Now, the fact that it says thunder or lightning is important because they synergizes better with abilities you get later on. At level 2, you get Destructive Wrath, Whenever you deal thunder or lightning damage, you can choose to use your channel divinity to deal maximum damage instead of rolling. So you could choose to use your channel divinity on your Wrath of the Storm ability, dealing 16 points of thunder or lightning damage. You could choose to use this on your Shatter, possibly dealing just straight up 24 thunder damage. You get the point. You could choose to maximize the 5d6 of the thunder damage from Destructive Wave to make it 30 plus 5d6 radiant. There's a lot of interesting combos you can do with multi-classing and different magic items. Specifically, things like the Staff of Thunder and Lightning can go a long way to just add a bunch of damage by maximizing. And again, you get up to 3 channel divinities. At 6th level, whenever you deal lightning damage to a large or smaller creature, you can choose to push it 10 feet away from you. No save. In theory, an enemy could use your level 1 ability, attack you. You choose to deal 2d8 thunder or 2d8 lightning damage, which you could maximize to 16 lightning damage. And if they're large or smaller, use your level 6 ability to push them 10 feet away. So there's a lot of built-in synergy in this class. At 8th level, you get Divine Strike. When you strike with a weapon once per turn, you deal 1d8 extra thunder damage to the target. When you reach 14th level, this turns to 2d8 thunder damage. Again, that 2d8 thunder damage you deal with your extra weapon attack could be maximized by using your level 2 Destructive Wrath ability, and if you crit, that 2d8 thunder damage turns into 4d8 thunder damage, and now you're turning that into 32 flat thunder damage. If you happen to find a way to get yourself access to the Booming Blade cantrip that does extra thunder damage on top of it, plus the Divine Strike ability, you can be stacking thunder damage, and if you bank on a crit, you could just maximize that damage to just deal flat thunder damage with no saving throw. And lastly, at 17, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed whenever you are not underground or indoors. Free flight that's not tied to wings that you just have is always something that's great. So no one can shoot or clip your wings because there are none. Number 1. And lastly, if you know anything about me, this is no surprise. My number 1 class in all of 5th edition is the Oath of the Ancients Paladin. Again, it's a Paladin because Paladins are my favorite class. I think they're one of the best balanced classes. As one of the, they have a lot of healing, they have a lot of damage. I think Rangers wish they could be even close to the way Paladins are designed. But Oath of the Ancients is the first character I ever played in 5th edition, and I have played multiple versions of them since because of this. So you get Oath spells, as you typically do. You get a lot of, again, if you see this kind of concept in my old campaigns, in 3.5, I was big on the Druids and the nature and that kind of thing. And this kind of took my penchant for divine healing characters and the idea of nature and combined the two. So Ensnaring Strike, not a super useful spell. Well, it can be useful, and you have it. Speak with Animals, I think, is always something that you never expect to use, but since you always have it prepared, you can find uses for it. Misty Step is amazing. One of the best spells as a Paladin. You don't have a lot of bonus action uses, period. And this is, movement that can get over gaps, can allow you to jump over things. It synergizes with your Fine Steed very well. Moonbeam, also an area of effect spell that has other benefits that you don't typically have AoE as a Paladin, so very useful. Plant Growth has a lot of good RP use, as well as some other combat applications potentially. Protection from Energy, again, another one of those spells where I feel like you're not going to go out of your way to prepare it, but it's always prepared for you, so you're going to find uses for it. You've got Ice Storm now, another very useful AoE spell, again, something you don't typically have. Stone Skin, a good survivability spell, although I've never used it in my experience. Commune with Nature, giving you access to some sort of commune type spell to answer questions that you want to ask to nature. And Tree Stride is some limited mobility. It's no transport via plants, but it does help you move around a little bit. As I had stated earlier, because you got a lot of good features later on as an Oath of the Ancients Paladin, I feel your Channel of Divinity is kind of lacking. So rather than Turn Undead, like a Channel of Devotion Paladin, you get Turn the Faithless, which is basically Turn Undead as per those type of features, except it doesn't work on Undead, it works on Fey creatures or Fiend creatures. But other than that, it functions like a turning ability. And Nature's Wrath is unfortunately one of the biggest disappointments of any Channel Divinity here. As an action, you cause Spectral Vines to spring up and reach for one target within 10 feet of you that you can see. They must succeed on a strength or dexterity saving throw. They get to choose or be restrained. While restrained by the vines, the creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of their turn. On success, they're freed. It's your whole action to do so. You'd actually be better off using Ensnaring Strike, which is a bonus action, and it's when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, so you get to hit them with it, deal the damage, and then they have to make a strength saving throw or be restrained. Larger creatures have advantage on it. While restrained, they also take continual damage with Ensnaring Strike. It is a strength saving throw, which if you choose to use it on a weaker Dexy type character, you know to use that. Whereas Nature's Wrath, they get to choose which one's whatever is better for them. Probably the best ability that I think is one of my favorite for the Oath of the Ancients Paladin is the level 7 Aura. You and friendly creatures within 10 feet of you have resistance to damage from spells. At 18th level, this increases to 30 feet. Again, the amount of time resistance to damage from spells has saved my party and myself. Remember, you're going to get your charisma modifier to your saving throws, so you're going to have that, plus you're going to have resistance to damage from spells. So between that, most spells you can shrug a lot of them off, depending on what other abilities and things you have from your race. At 15th, you're going to get Undying Sentinel. When you're reduced to 0 hit points and not killed outright, you can choose to drop to 1 hit point instead. Once you use this ability, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, and you also now suffer no drawbacks from old age and can't be magically aged, which is nice, especially if you probably end up, like I did, playing a half-elf. That makes your life gonna be pretty good. You're also immune to disease, so you got a lot of good things going for you. And lastly, at 20th level, you are an Elder Champion. Using your action, you can undergo a transformation. For 1 minute, you gain the following benefits. At the start of your turn, you regain 10 hit points. That does not say at the start of your turn when your hit points are not at 0. So this can potentially heal you up. It's not a concentration ability. So when you go down with this ability up, you can heal up again and bring yourself from 0 up to 10 hit points. Whenever you cast a Paladin spell that has a casting time of 1 action, you can choose to cast it as a bonus action instead, which can have a whole bunch of combat utility. And then enemies within 10 feet of you have disadvantage on saving throws against your Paladin spells and your Channel Divinity options. Probably not going to be too much with your Channel Divinity options, but you do have pretty sweet spells by the time you're level 20, so that can be used by you to great effect. So that's it, folks. Sorry this one's probably a little bit long, but I wanted to explain why I liked all of those subclasses. I hope you've stuck with it. Let me know what you think about this. I know you guys do seem to enjoy my top 10 videos when they're about magic items, but I'm trying a couple different things before I dive back into dealing with different magic items going forward. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Feel free to give it a thumbs up if you liked it, or a thumbs down if you didn't. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, now's a great time to do so. Ring that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on any of the new updates coming out with the channel. I've been trying to cover news as best I can. I'm planning to get back into DM's Guild reviews, as well as doing unboxings and this new Nerd Immersions Guide to Everything series, where I review stuff you may not know about 5th edition or weird, quirky rules that are published in official 5th edition sources that may have just missed or you glanced over. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.